listening to the Terrific Teacherpreneur, a podcast for teachers looking to grow a successful online business. Your host, Alex, was able to transform her Teachers Pay Teachers store from a small side hustle into a profitable full-time business. She now helps other teachers do the same. Listen along for actionable tips and helpful wisdom about business and marketing as a teacherpreneur. Here's your host, Alex.
Hello and welcome to the Terrific Teacherpreneur podcast. I'm so excited to be back. I took a little bit of a break, and if you listen to my last episode, you'll know why. Now, I do want to say that I'm back, but not in the same way I used to be. I used to be really consistent with weekly, quite chunky episodes sometimes, and I really don't think that I have that in me at the moment. So I kind of figured that coming back, even if it's not as consistently, is still better than nothing. So you might not be hearing from me every week, but I'm going to try to be here as much as I can. I'm going to be offering some short, sweet episodes a little bit less frequently, but I hope that's okay. And today I wanted to share my thoughts on something that I noticed in a post in my Facebook group, the Terrific Teacherpreneur. I'll put a link in the show notes if you haven't checked out my Facebook group. But I basically created a post a while back. I asked, for those of you with little ones, how do you navigate finding time for TPT? Give me all the tips. I was obviously really struggling at the time. I didn't have any kind of, babysitting or childcare or anything happening. So it was just me trying to juggle parenting and running a business. And I was feeling really burnt out at the time. And a lot of the comments were really helpful. Some of them, were talking a lot about waking up really, really early in the morning, like 4 a.m., working until midnight, like trying to basically fit in all this stuff, like working as a full-time teacher, but also parenting and TPT. And it was intense. Some of these schedules that people had, it was really intense to read. And I actually got an Instagram message after that post from someone else outside of the US, from the UK, just like me. And she was like, just an FYI, things are different for us. So in the US, a lot of mothers don't really get any maternity leave, tend to work multiple jobs, getting up hours before they have the kids, never having weekends off. It's pretty normalized. And that kind of hustle culture is very far removed from my reality, she said. And I think she said, asking a bunch of Americans how they do things is very different. And I actually guess I hadn't really thought about that when I was reading the post. I was just reading about people's experiences. I thought, yeah, some of it's intense, but it hadn't really occurred to me. And I thought, yeah, it does kind of strike me as something that's interesting to chat about. And I wonder if it's a cultural thing. But there is definitely a very hustle-like mindset, especially when it comes to, I think, Americans, but, particularly in the TPT world as teachers and sellers. I think it comes from often not being paid well enough as a teacher, feeling like, that you have to have TPT in order to have some extra cash. And then you're trying to grow this business outside of that. Most of the time, if you're, say you're a woman in your 20s or 30s, you might also have young children. And, you're trying to do all three, and it's insane. And I kind of got to thinking that how much of us are really bogged down by too many things, and how much of us are really stuck in a very toxic hustle mindset where we think that it's a good thing to hustle really hard and to work ourselves, to the bone and to overdo it. And sometimes I think that's glamorized and glorified, and, it's become like a badge of honor to do all this. But I think it can actually be really damaging. It's not great for our physical and mental health. And so I guess in this episode, I kind of want to talk a little bit about how we can step back from that and sort of share a little bit about how to create a bit more of a balance if you can. And the real simple solution, I honestly think, is to be okay with doing less, be okay with doing the bare minimum in your business, just by making sure that you prioritize the stuff that is important. So when you do have time, you are working on important things, and that may mean that you work less on your business, but you can still make great waves. So for example, let's just say this is an example person. It might be similar to your situation. Say you are full-time in the classroom, and you're getting up at 4 a.m. so that you can work on TPT for an hour or so. And then, you've got to get the kids ready for school, and then you're at school all day and you're exhausted. And you might even spend time after school or in the early evening doing your lesson planning and stuff. You get home and you're making the kids at dinner and you're putting them to bed and you're running the household and, you're exhausted from that. And then, you plonk down on the couch at 8 or 9 o'clock at night and you just want to collapse in front of Netflix. But you're like, no, I've got to get back to working on the business. I need to grow this business and make money. And then you go back to your office and, you work for more hours in the evening there. And, by the time you go to bed, you're just a complete zombie because you've just, done a million things without stopping. And I mean, how dangerous is that for our health? And so I think the only way around that is to look at, what you've got in that day, say a full-time job and being a parent, and there are things that, you just can't cut back on, fair enough. And when it comes to TPT, that can be the thing that tends to be, pushed to the side, or it probably isn't number one priority in your life. Your number one priority is probably your family, and then, your job and things like that comes after that. And TPT might well be at the bottom of the list. You might already be kind of barely finding time for it. But say you do have a bit of time in your day, or you want to make that time, whether it's in the early mornings or the late evenings, that's okay. But I think you don't need to be doing large amounts of it. You don't need to be getting up at like 4 a.m. and then also working from 8, 9 o'clock at night till midnight and trying to do like 4 or 5 hours or something insane like that. Because you can actually run a successful business on less time than that if you can spend your time more wisely. And so, for example, you could actually enjoy your morning and get up at like, more 6 a.m. or something with your kids, have that little bit more of a lie-in. And then at night, maybe just do an hour, like from 8 till 9 or something like that, and still have this exact same success that you would have had before doing, 3 or 4 hours of work if you were to spend that hour wisely. So I guess what I'm trying to hopefully convince you to do is to spend less time working, to give yourself the break that you deserve so you can actually go and have a lie-in or watch Netflix or whatever. But when you do get that little bit of time, you do the right stuff. And it's so easy to say that. And when it actually comes to it, we never do. And I'm guilty of this sometimes too. But we sit down and we think there's a million things to do. I want to do all of them. I see all these other sellers and they have all of these marketing platforms, they're on Pinterest and Instagram and Facebook, and they're making products and they're updating products and they're in all these courses and memberships and they're doing this and they're doing that. And they're taking on the email list and they have a blog and they're building a website and they're selling on their website and they're doing ads and every single thing you could physically be doing as a seller. And you think, well, everyone else seems to be doing those things. I need to do those things too. Easily, you can blow those 4 hours in that day by trying to do all of those different things. But you probably won't make that much progress in your business because you're probably trying to do a million things you don't really have the capacity for. Instead of spending 4 hours trying to do, 10 minutes on each of those things, you could just spend 1 hour creating a great product. That would probably make you so much more money than all of that stuff combined. And this is coming from me. I love Pinterest. I love email marketing. I love all that stuff. I'm always talking about those things. And they are great, but they shouldn't be the majority of your time. They should be the small part of your time, like the 80-20 rule, the Pareto principle. 80% of our time is spent on the things that bring us 20% of our money and vice versa. And so be honest with yourself. Are you finding that you are putting in these hours in early mornings and late evenings and you're, really burning the candle at both ends and you're actually spending all this time, all these hours every week on the things that don't really make you a lot of money? And you're probably spending 20% of your time, an hour here or there throughout the week, on the actual profitable stuff. And I think it's really important to be confronted with that and to really look at where you're spending your time. Ask yourself, am I currently sacrificing my physical health, my mental health, time with my family, things like that, my free time, my sanity? Am I sacrificing that so that I can make a Pinterest pin? Am I sacrificing that so that I can finish editing this blog post? I love Pinterest and I love blogging. Trust me, I really, really do. But even I'm going to sit here and say, sometimes if you are limited on time and your health matters more, you might have to push some of that stuff aside and do a really, really small amount of it and just instead really be focusing on just TPT. There's other stuff that's obviously money making depending on your business, but for most of us as sellers, creating products and then making listings look good, SEO, reviews, thumbnails, whatever, that is the stuff that is actually going to fill up your PayPal account. That is the stuff that's actually going to make the difference in your business for the most part. And then as become more established, yes, a lot of that other stuff matters too. You might need to go and run an ad, whatever. But I'd say for most of you listening, you can probably acknowledge that the important stuff is the stuff we do on TPT itself. So I encourage you to do a little bit of a time audit this week. If you are someone that is feeling really burnt out and you are finding yourself really hustling incredibly hard and it's just draining you, I want you to have a look at where you're spending your time this week. And I want you to start thinking of that 80-20 and making sure that only 20% of your time, which might just be an hour in the week or something like that, or at least a small amount of time, is spent on maybe the marketing and the things that aren't currently bringing you a lot of money. And the majority of your time is spent on the money-making stuff. And overall, it doesn't have to be a large amount of time. Like I said, you could cut down your 3 or 4 hours down to 1 hour. You might set aside 5 hours a week for TPT, and instead you just do 3 this week because you spend those 3 creating really great product. that is far more worth it. That is going to make much more of a big difference. So my takeaway here is I really want you to spend less time and spend the time you do have more wisely. You can still make great progress in your business, and I think you'll be happier and healthier for it. I really hope that this has helped this week. I just kind of wanted to give a little bit of a pep talk. It's something that I've personally been noticing. Like I said, I've been struggling to juggle parenting and business. And when Lily naps, I get this hour. It's this really small amount of time. I'm now a lot more mindful about making great products in that time and working on my listings during that time. And if I'm marketing on a profitable marketing platform during that time, which for me would be something like Pinterest, instead of a Facebook page. I am really, really mindful now about how I spend my time. And I have to say, compared to when I was a full-time TPT seller, I am working drastically less hours. And my business is earning more than it was a year ago. I am doing well. My business is doing well. I'm spending less time and earning more. I'm doing fine. My business is doing great because I think I'm spending my time more wisely. I've been very confronted with being truly time poor, I feel, compared to what I was before. Compared to when I was full-time TPT, I felt like I had endless hours to do all the things. And I did. I did all the things. And I didn't really do a lot of them that well. And I didn't really prioritize the money-making stuff. And now I have less time, but I focus more on important stuff. And my business is doing well, and I'm coping with it. Anyway, I wanted to keep this episode a bit short and sweet, so I'm going to have to wrap this up. But I hope this little pep talk has helped. Like I said, be sure to join the Facebook group if you haven't already. I'll put a link in the show notes. And if you want to pop in there and open up the conversation, I would love to chat about it. Talk about how you're juggling your time, whether you're going to cut back on your time. Has this episode resonated with you? Are you doing a bit of a time audit? You're going to spend less time on things, more time on things. I just love to hear about it. Let's talk about it. I think it's a really interesting thing to talk about, and I think it might make a really big difference on the other people that read your post or comments. So yeah, let's open up the conversation. And I hope that you're enjoying that I'm back. I'm very excited. But anyway, I hope you have a terrific day.
Thank you for listening to this episode of the Terrific Teacherpreneur. If you're enjoying the show, please feel free to rate, subscribe, and review on your preferred podcast listening platform. We really appreciate that effort. Come back for more actionable tips and helpful wisdom in the next episode with your host, Alex. Until then.